We are back. It's been a few weeks, maybe even a month or so since I shot the last video, but just been super busy, both with work, after hours activity, getting this S2000, which you guys know pretty well at this point, to the point where it is 100% ready for paint. Had a decent amount of fab stuff we had to touch up, some insulation grinding, as you guys remember. But yeah, I am ready to take this thing to paint, ready to get it out of sight, out of mind for a little bit, because I want to get to the nitty gritty, the fun stuff. As you can see, we are not at my garage. I wish this was my garage, but I am actually at work at T1 Race Development right now. Had to have, like I said, some fab stuff done, so some welding done on the car, which is going to be a lot easier here, given the facility where we already build some world-class stuff. And yeah, so I got Brett from work to help me do the fab stuff that I'm not capable of. Got it to that point, and all the parts finally trickled in from various manufacturers. It kind of been delayed due to COVID stuff, which is understandable, can't be mad about that, but all the parts have showed up. Super exciting. So I'm ready to take all the engine stuff to the machine shop, but I wanted to kind of just do a little walkthrough on basically the full driveline setup that's going to be new to the car. I thought it'd be kind of cool, given the space here, to lay it out. So kind of cool to just look and see, from back to front, what's going to go into this thing to make it, the true, basically 1100 horsepower beast that it's going to be. This is all stuff that's been in my car. I know works, but it's, some of the stuff is parts that people haven't really seen, or maybe question why I've gone with certain parts. So I thought it'd be cool to just kind of show you what it all looks like before it goes in. I'm going to throw it on a workbench we've got here and kind of go over some of the details on it, to explain why we've gone with the parts that we have, the benefits of using those versus maybe some others. And if you guys got any questions on that, I'll be more than happy to answer it. If you see something I'm doing wrong, let me know before we put this in the car, because that would be great. But yeah, so let's take a closer look at all these parts. Let's get started with probably my favorite part going in the car. Anybody that follows me on social media or has heard me talk about this build to date, or followed any of my car, any of the races it's been to, knows that I am a absolute fanatic for these sequential gearboxes. I put one of these in my car after a couple years of running basically the factory gear set, and then I put in a PPG synchro set in the factory case, which honestly was really fun, held a lot of power. But when you start getting to the bigger turbo sizes, the shift speed becomes really, really critical, and I wasn't able to flat foot shift all the shifts repeatedly with the factory gearbox, and it wasn't cutting it at races. I was banging my head against a wall, just hoping it would go into gear every time. And really, honestly, it wasn't fun, because it's not fun when you know what the car's capable of and it's not repeatable. So enter this gearbox. I cannot say enough good words about this thing. Quaife only rates the 69G gearbox here at, I think, 700 horsepower. After talking with my supplier Andrew at Momentum Motorsports, kind of putting myself at ease with what these things are actually capable of, having seen what they're doing in the Evo drag racing world, he convinced me, take the plunge, let's do this. He was confident in it. At the time, my car is making around, I think, 900 horsepower or so, and man, this thing is just held up to every single thing I can throw at it. So my car currently makes about 1200, and this thing is still just rocking, like no signs of wearing out, which honestly I wasn't expecting after 2 years of drag racing and half mile and street stuff. But the fluids just continue to be great coming out of it. It shifts every time, stays in gear every time. And I can't speak highly enough. I can't speak too highly about this thing. It's completely transformed my car. I'm really excited to get it in the project car, because I don't think there's a more fun thing that we could possibly do with these cars. It's just every time you want to shift it, just bang it, it goes in every single time, and it's geared so perfectly that it's just bang, bang, bang. I just want bang, bang, bang. It's a hell of a lot of fun. So as you can see, this thing comes really, really well equipped. So it actually comes with a factory drive shaft compatible AP1 drive shaft flange there. Obviously it goes in the factory shifter location. Comes with a bell housing that bolts right to the back of the block. You don't have to do any crazy things. Uses all the factory clutch related components in here. And there's a couple different gear ratios you can do. I think the one that I picked out for mine is kind of what I steered everybody towards this point. It just makes a ton of sense for what these people, or what most people are using these cars for, which is going to be high horsepower setups that just need really, really well spaced gearing. And you know, I have a pretty decent top speed. So depending on how high you're turning the car, what size tire you're on, you know, this gearbox is good for over 200 miles an hour with the factory rear end ratio. So there's a couple of things you can order the gearbox with. This is obviously a no-brainer for anybody that's running a standalone ECU. So this is basically a strain gauge load cell built into this knob that goes right on the supplied shifter. With that, you can basically have an input sent to the ECU that tells it, you know, at this much force, I want an ignition cut, shift cut, whatever you're trying to set up there. So it makes it, you know, basically a flawless shift every time. Obviously, if you've got you know, ECU, you're going to want to measure, or you're going to want to be able to know what the gear position is. So this just basically goes right in there and is able to relay the information to your dash, ECU, wherever you have it going. It comes with a tip sensor, and it also has a couple different ways you can plumb it for an aftermarket cooler if you want to do that, although the cooler is extra. So mating the transmission to the engine would be pretty useless if we didn't have a great clutch. So let's check out another really nice piece. Anyone in the S2000 community is pretty familiar with the name Science of Speed. So this carbon twin disc is a clutch that I've offered for a number of years. I mean, I remember seeing them online even before I dreamed of having a turbo S2000. So these guys have been doing really cool things to the platform. This clutch is, in my opinion, hands down the best clutch you could possibly buy for one of these. So like I said, it's a carbon twin disc. The reason I really wanted to splurge for the carbon when I first bought mine is I knew that I was going to be slipping it at the drag strip a lot in order to get decent launches and not break drivetrain components, and carbon just stands up to the heat caused by that a lot better than your normal clutch would. So I've had one in my car again since I think it's been on ethanol, so since 2017 or so. I've only had to have it serviced one time, and this thing is just worked flawlessly. I've slipped it for, you know, a couple seconds at the drag strip before, and I was trying to make sure I wasn't going to break something on drag radials, and this thing just keeps ticking. And you know, the guys at Science of Speed are really easy to work with. Getting it sent in when you do need to get it serviced is really easy. Assembly is really easy. They have great directions. Everything's labeled in the order it needs to go in. So yeah, I mean, this clutch is again, absolute awesome quality. You know, you can see the attention to detail throughout in it. I'm not going to disassemble it, but I promise if you decide to go with one of these, the quality is immediately evident, and you're not going to have a better, you know, a better drag strip street clutch. You know, one thing I've always had issues with on twin disc clutches, which you know, most high horsepower guys are going to complain about, is just the drivability on the street. And in all honesty, this thing would be completely fine at a daily driver. You know, I don't think Raj is going to be daily driving this thing by any means, but I mean, you could make road trips in this thing no problem. Your leg's not going to get tired. The modulation's super easy. So again, I'm super thrilled with this, and I don't think there's a better clutch we could put in here. So I'm pretty excited to get that in there, get it mated to the engine, get the quay put on there, and I think our driveline stuff is going to be really well squared away. So I don't know if you guys remember, but it's already got an 8.8 conversion in it, which I mistakenly said 9-inch for like 5 times in the first video I filmed. But the driveline, at least from the transmission back, was already sorted in the car. But now I know we're going to have a super solid setup with the clutch, the drive shaft that we'll be able to reuse since the Quaith uses a factory drive shaft flange. Yeah, so it's going to be really, really solid, which is what's going to, you know, make this thing really fun on the street. So you're not having to, you know, close your eyes every time you want to beat on it. Yeah, so let's move forward and we'll actually get to the engine stuff now. All right, let's get to the heart and soul of this thing, what everybody's probably super excited about. So as you can tell, we're going to be building a Toyota 2JZ motor. Just kidding. We are sticking with the Honda motor. I love this motor about as much as you could love an engine, which maybe that's a little creepy, but I love these little motors. They are amazing. I get really excited about the fact that we're actually going to keep the block that came in the car that you see behind you with it. I think that's really cool. Maybe that's something weird that my dad got in my head from an early age. I always talk about numbers match on Camaros and stuff, but I think it's pretty cool. We are going to swap to an AP2 crank. There's basically no downside to us increasing the stroke on this. It's going to make the street manners better. It's going to make spool better, make power everywhere better, and we're really not going to lose any usable RPM. I've actually turned mine on the steel rods we're going to be using in this engine over 10,000 RPM now, 1,200 horsepower. So there's no downsides to getting the extra stroke. So that's definitely what we're going to do on this thing. Moving forward from that, you can see that we are definitely not on stock liners anymore. That's kind of a given. But we have found that the Inline Pro sleeve program is pretty stellar. It's taken a ton of abuse, over 50 pounds of boost on my car. So I don't, there's no reason to look anywhere else, in my opinion, at this time. These guys do great work. Christian, John, all those guys over there really take care of you. You know, they send you back the product just as you want it. As you can see, we kind of left we have not decked the block. We've not done the final finish on here. We got to do the water jackets, which is all going to be done at the machine shop by Watt, that you guys have probably heard me name drop a couple times now. So he's going to do all the final assembly on the short block. But again, those guys at Inline Pro did exactly what we needed them to do here. Exact same thing they did on my engine. So I know this thing's going to be amazing. It's going to take all the boost we can throw at it. Hopefully all the RPM and power we can throw at it too. While I was there, went ahead and had them send me their M12 head stud kit. Again, this is the exact same setup I'm using in my car. I know that's kind of anecdotal evidence at this time, but that's really what I've got to go with. For the rods, we are using the off-the-shelf powder rods. These things have proven to be extremely stout. I've always kind of heard the jokes about, you know, the last thing that you'll see you know, on the ground out of an engine is going to be a powder rod. You know, it may sling through the block, but it's going to be the last thing that actually breaks, which I'm okay with that, because I've seen rod failures, and that's one of my least favorite things to look at. When the rod fails, you pretty much get to do everything again. So I did not want to chance anything with the strength of the rod that we were going to be using. As far as the piston we're going to be using, this is a pretty trick little guy from Diamond. So Diamond started offering their kind of import all-out race piston line called the Rebel piston. I approached Dan at Diamond a couple years ago, maybe late 2019, 2020, something like that, about making the first set of S2000 Rebel pistons, because at that time I think they were only doing B series and K series. So he was like, yeah man, that sounds super great, super sick, I want to be part of the project. So they got me these knocked out, built them to our spec, and they have been absolutely amazing. So these pistons do have a lot of really trick things. One thing that may kind of stand out, which I'll try and balance as I'm showing you the parts, is we are not using your typical wrist pin lock in here. We're actually using what's referred to as a pin button. So what this allows us to do is it basically is adding back, you know, this material that would typically be gone where the wrist pin would be, where the wrist pin lock would be. And we're basically adding that material back in there while keeping the wrist pin in place. So it's kind of hard to do while I'm holding the camera, but you get the idea. So that basically sits in there. It does have the groove for the oil ring to slide in there, which also helps locate it. Oh, there you go. Look at those magic hands. So you can see the wrist pin button sits right in there. Again, look at the added material that you have now back helping the piston. That's not something you're going to get with obviously a hole and then just a wire lock in there typically. The other thing it allows you to do is these are actually a little bit better for allowing the wrist pin to float inside the piston. Sometimes if the tolerances are too tight between the wrist pin, pistons, and the locks themselves, you can actually get to where they can bind. And that is something that the pin buttons do help with a lot. The other thing you'll notice is that these wrist pins are black. So they have what is referred to as the diamond-like carbon coating on them, which Trend offers. This is their DLC 250 wall wrist pins that we run in the GTRs, and I've seen the kind of damage and stuff they can take there, and it was a no questions asked that, you know, I was going to do it, even though it's kind of an expensive thing to do. So the diamond-like, I have said coating in the past in error, but it's actually diamond-like carbon coating. Diamond-like carbon coating that is on there is really strong. But the other thing that it does, which I actually didn't realize until researching it a little bit more, is the coating is really slippery. So it allows a big increase in the actual slipperiness, if you will, of the wrist pin itself, which, as you can imagine, keeping everything well lubricated and as little metal on metal action as we can get out of a wrist pin or any other engine internal is going to be highly advantageous. So again, sprung for the extra money in these, springing for it in this thing, and I think it's going to add a ton of reliability and long-term performance for this thing. Moving on to the cylinder head, you can see that we're going to be using a combination of Ferrea and BC components. BC makes a really nice drop-in cam, even if you're just doing an all-motor setup, something like that. That has proven to pick up power. I mean, it's it's hard to believe that there are some notable gains to be made on the factory S2000 engine from a set of camshaft with as efficient as the engine already is from the factory. But I mean, the guys at Real Street proved years ago that these cams did indeed do that. If I remember correctly, they made pretty much around 13 horsepower everywhere, and then I think over 20 towards redline. So these cams have been proven to make power, naturally aspirated, and I found them to be a really nice camshaft even when I'm turbocharged. So some of you guys have maybe seen some of the dynos that I put up with my car before using the same turbocharger we're going to be using on this setup. Same intake manifold, same exhaust manifold setup, and when paired with these cams, I mean, the thing has an incredible power band, anywhere from 5,000 to 9,500. This thing's making a ton of torque. There's no lag in it. It's a crazy responsive setup, especially for something making 900 to 1,000 horsepower. So those cams were no questions asked what we're going to be going to. As far as the Ferrea components, so most everything is an off-the-shelf Ferrea component. So they've done a really nice job of packaging up some dual valve spring kits, which is exactly what this is going to use. So it comes with the titanium retainers, comes with the guides, the seals, the locks. The only thing that's kind of custom here is we do have a custom exhaust valve. So the S2000s, when you start turning a bunch of RPM and making a lot of power, I have heard rumors of exhaust valves dropping and failing. So I did not want to have that happen, because that can get real expensive real quick. So Ferrea made this 0.5 millimeter bigger exhaust stem for me, and so far it's proven to be really good. I didn't want to go too large with it. Some manufacturers make like 6.6 valves, and Ferrea, Zeke, it's really good in the technical department there, kind of steered me away from that. My engine builder Watt also agreed that seemed like maybe not the best move with as much weight as we'd be adding there. So we did come to an agreement that the 6 mil is what we wanted to try. So that is indeed what we've got. It is their off-the-shelf stock diameter in terms of the actual head on the intake and the exhaust. It's just a stem we step out on the exhaust side. So no +1 stuff here. I haven't really determined that it's necessary. So yeah, the valve train stuff's gonna be well taken care of. Again, we've turned over 10,000 RPM in mine. Haven't seen any issues with that so far. Yeah, so we'll be doing that. I don't have any pictures or the copper seats that we'll be using right now. They are at the machine shop, but we will be doing a copper valve seat in there. Have had some weird issues with the valve seats wearing out a little prematurely, at least with my driving style, which is probably not the best. I like to live on the rev limiter. Maybe I'm a crappy driver sometimes too, but the copper seats have seemed to solve a lot of the issues there. Lash has been in check every time I've checked it since we put those in. So kind of a no-brainer. If we're doing everything else top notch, we might as well go ahead and do that too. Last but certainly not least is this badass little turbo from Zoner Rotor. So Zoner Rotor is a partnership between Force Performance, which a lot of you guys may recognize from a lot of the like DSM world. They've done a lot of DSM stuff. They're starting into LS Turbo, stuff like that. So this is a partnership between Force Performance, who's local to us, and then also Tile, who everybody knows who Tile is. They make the Tile Qs, QRJs, the MVSs, MVRs, V60s, turbine housings, for a variety of different Garrett-based turbos. So Zoner Rotor is a partnership between those two companies, and they've really gotten a lot of notoriety in the last couple of years for what is their S-line turbine wheels. So as you can see, that is not a normal looking turbine wheel by any means. That is how they come. There's nothing wrong with that thing. So the idea behind that turbine wheel is that we can still get the exhaust drive that we need out of the turbo, but we can take some material out of it and also decrease some of the restriction from having all of the normal turbine blades in there. And I have to say, I mean, this thing packs a punch. I mean, it's a T3 frame turbo that I've made over 1,000 wheel horsepower on. We use it on large majority of the GTRs that we build in house. So we've made over 1,700. I think we've even creeped up on or a little over 1,800 with our ethanol based cars, and then our methanol powered race cars all make, you know, over 2,000 on these things. So a little pair of these on a 3.8 to a 4.1 GTR making, you know, 1,700 to 2,000 depending on the fuel, making over 1,000 in mine, and it's just this tiny little turbo. I mean, it's a little 68 millimeter T3 frame turbo making that kind of power. I mean, it's like show level quality, and I don't think there's, you know, maybe not show points for turbos, but if there were, this thing would get them. Got the nice tile stainless steel VBN housing. The center section is a super nice complete billet center section. Let me get this thing turned back around, get a good angle on it. So the craftsmanship on it is absolutely stellar. You know, the power band on my car with this thing is really honestly hard to believe. I kind of touched on it when we were looking at the cams, but I think I had full spool by, you know, 5,000 or so, and it just holds peak torque all the way to like 9,000. You know, I've really leaned on it. This is actually what I went 199 miles an hour in the half mile with. I've been 820s at 173 miles an hour with this thing in a 2,900 pound car. So yeah, this thing packs an absolute punch. The build quality is top notch. So this is definitely the turbo that entered my mind when this build first came up, and I was never really considering anything else, because this thing is just honestly the perfect 68 millimeter turbo. All right, so I hope you guys liked that little parts walkthrough. A lot of that stuff you're not gonna be able to see once it's on the car, so I kind of wanted to give you an idea on what it looked like, maybe some cool features on it, hopefully a little bit of technical stuff. I'm not the greatest at that kind of thing. I'm pretty dumb actually, but you know, I wanted to show you guys that and kind of give you a walkthrough. So we'll take one more look at this thing before it heads to paint. Let me know if you guys might want to check out some videos of it getting painted, or if we can go to the machine shop and maybe look at some of the stuff. We can't go through all the tricks of the trade there because there's a lot of proprietary stuff, but you know, if there's some things that you guys want to see, just let me know, drop a comment in there. And yeah, until the next time, I really appreciate you guys. Later.